Ghanaians how comfortable or otherwise we are with this lithium deal that Ghana has recently entered into with a concessionaire. All right, it's yet to be ratified by Parliament, but of course, at this point, everybody who feels vested in it has been sharing views, interesting and varying views. So today we have with us the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor himself, who of course is very interested in getting the deal through for Ghana, and he's our guest today on the Super Morning Show. How nice to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo, and a very good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers. I'm very happy to be here.
It's our pleasure.
And I'm very happy to see you and my friend.
Yes, it's our pleasure to have you. There's a lot to talk about, and in fact the conversation has been going on. I have no doubt that you've heard so many of the views that have been shared, from the IEA to Bright Simmons to Fui Selome and Fui Chikata, Fui Chikata and Kofi Ansan. So many of those who have shared their views on this deal. Having heard all of this feedback, do you still believe that this is the best deal Ghana could have struck?
Well, thank you very much, and once again let me say a very good morning to your viewers and listeners, and to at the very beginning, at the very outset, indicate, as I did in my press conference, that all of the discourse which is taking place, call it debate, or sometimes it gets passionate and so on and so forth, all of it is fully welcomed. I think that's how it should be. That's the way to build a country. Governments take decisions, citizens critique the decisions, they interrogate the decisions, they make suggestions, and so on and so forth. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Number two, Kojo, I sign leases every now and again. I mean, I believe that in the course of a month or two, I may sign a lease for quarry or for gold or for sand winning or for salt concession or what have you. I normally will not sign a lease in the full glare of the press. In the case of this particular transaction, I signed a lease in the full glare of the press. I invited the press and made remarks before I signed the lease. It was because we recognize as a government that we have to proceed on this matter, as we should do with all other matters, and as we do with all other matters, with utmost transparency. It's also why the president insisted very forcefully that before we negotiate or consider any application in relation to the green minerals of our country, lithium inclusive, we have to have a policy for the exploitation and management of the green minerals of our country, which is why I made a statement in Parliament. I have the date here, sometime in July this year. I made a statement in Parliament on the proposed policy for the management and exploitation of the green minerals of our country. And a lot of the considerations which have been put on the table today were articulated in that statement. You can get a hold of it. I have it here. Talked about the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation model, the GISDEC model, the joint ventureship model, the tender system, all the issues that have been talked about today. I spoke about them then. Following which, we had some stakeholder consultations and thereafter put a memorandum before the cabinet. The cabinet critiqued the memorandum and examined it thoroughly. I think it must have taken us about 3 or 4 hours before the 55th meeting of the cabinet on 27 July 2023 approved the policy, the modified policy for the management and exploitation of the green minerals of our country. And the terms of that policy is here, and specifically the cabinet approved the following policies for the exploitation of green mineral. Royalties rates applicable to green minerals be set at a minimum of 7%. To provide some benefits to incentivize investors to move successfully into higher levels of the value addition, review the Minerals and Mining Act, and it goes on, and I can share it with you. So the cabinet approved a policy for the management of the green minerals of our country. It was after that we had the confidence to begin negotiations with Atlantic Lithium. At this stage, I think it's important for me to point out that Atlantic Lithium secured their first recognizance license as far back as 1st August 2012. And having done recognizance, they proceeded to acquire a prospecting license, and then having prospected and discovered lithium in commercial quantities, they applied for a mining lease. Now, it's also important that we point this out. With this kind of trajectory, with this kind of trajectory, by law, specifically Section 39(2) of the Minerals and Mining Act 206, Act 703, and your listeners can check that out. The company, having undertaken an exploration and made commercial find, was entitled to the grant of a mining lease subject to regulatory compliance. So what was the point I'm making? In very simple terms, having gone through all that from 2012 all through to discovering lithium in commercial quantity, the government was not reserved with the right to say, look, you've spent all this money in your exploration, you've done this, you've done that, and therefore walk away. We are not going to give you a mining lease. You are required to grant a mining lease in subject to regulatory compliance. So that is the context within which I believe this discussion should be had. Now, it's important also for me to point out, most fundamentally, and if you want, secondly, that I will respectfully say that, look, facts are facts. Facts are facts. We can all have opinions, but facts are facts. Data is data. And in a very specialized, complex area such as this, which is largely green, and I say green in terms of uncharted territory. This is the first lithium lease Ghana is signing. Gold, diamond, and the rest, we've exploited them for several years here in Ghana and across the world. In fact, even across the world, lithium is relatively new. So in having the discussion, I believe that we should try as much as possible to separate opinions, emotions, conjecture from facts, data, and so on and so forth. I'm minister, I've been minister, I've had the privilege of being minister for 3 years, but nonetheless, I'm not an expert. When it comes to all of these matters, I have a full army of technical experts at the ministry, at the Minerals Commission, who advise me. And so one will expect that when the matters are put on the table, as they are now, from here, I'm meeting the coalition of civil society organizations. Literally all the people who have had a say in this matter. They've put themselves together for us to meet them. Come in.
Yes, but the question really is, now you've heard what others have said. You started by saying this was the best deal for Ghana. Having listened to all that has been said, do you still insist that this is the best we could have had?
Very brilliant question. And when Kojo asked the question, I found it instructive as well. But that was exactly the answer I was coming to give.
Okay.
Which is that, so yes, I'm going to meet them. So we have to dwell on the data and the facts. And if you want, even if you are going to express an opinion, it must be an expert opinion. So I like to hear, for example, my friend Winston. I like to hear Winston that Ghana is negotiated a deal with Atlantic Lithium where we have agreed to a 13% free carried interest. And there's never been an occasion in our country where we've negotiated any mineral, bauxite, manganese, gold, you name it, at the large scale level, where we've been able to secure 13% free carried interest. We secure 10% all the time. I also want to hear, for example,
if I may, I think this has been disputed by Bright Simmons, who suggests that in 1969 Ghana negotiated 20% equity in Ashanti Gold with an option to buy another 20%. In the 80s, Ghana negotiated 30% in the Konongo mine project with Southern Cross Mining. In the 70s, we had 55% participation rate. So he suggests that this 10% royalty is not the highest rate we've ever negotiated as a country.
Yeah, well, I'm not in a business of right or wrong here, But the most important point is that if you take, for example, in the 70s, specifically in 90, the one he refers to, and I'm not, but let me respectfully say, I'm not getting into the business of this person is right, that person is right. As I said, facts are facts. In the 70s, the 1970s, specifically in 1972, the government passed the Mining Operations Government Participation Decree 1972, NRCD 132, which gave government 55% shares in all the foreign mining companies, foreign mining companies, existing foreign mining companies, except the African Manganese Company, which was completely taken over by the government under the new name Ghana National Manganese Corporation. So it's important, Kojo, for us to appreciate that there is the concept of resource nationalism, which is another whole area altogether. Bolivia is an example. Where one day they just woke up and the government passed a decree and said, we've expropriated all the mines in that country. I think the verdict is out. The jury is giving a verdict loud and clear. That has never worked. In fact, in the 1970s, Ghana's mining industry was at its lowest point. And you know what it means. We in Ghana could go to parliament. Government could head to parliament tomorrow and enact a law in parliament which says that we have taken over Atlantic Lithium 100%. But you know the implications. The whole mining industry will collapse because that is not done. In the current dispensation, whatever arrangement you have must be negotiated. And the question also that has to be asked is, whatever equity that the government held, was it paid for or not? I'm talking about free carried interest, which is the equity which is not paid for. All the equities in the large-scale mining operations in our country, Goldfields, Anglo Gold, Newmont, Cardinal, you name it, Golden Star, we hold a minimum of 10%. This is the first time we've been able to negotiate equity which is free carried interest at 13%. Then I give you another example, because I'm arriving at a point to answer your question whether or not we still stand by this deal. I give you another example. You have a situation where when it comes to royalties, you will find that, for example, and indeed when it comes to free carried interest, Mali is 10%, Zimbabwe is 0%, just so that they attract investment into the exploitation of the lithium resources of the country. So Zimbabwe, when it comes to free carried interest, is 0. Then you talk about royalties. Australia is 5%, Zimbabwe 5%, Mali 6%. We have negotiated 10%. So what is the point I'm making? With the greatest of respect, I'm very interested and I'm looking forward to this meeting at 9 o'clock, where for the first time, if I should say, we're going to have the opportunity to talk to each other rather than talk at each other, where we're going to sit around the table to have a proper conversation and hear each other out. Because we are in a business of building a country, and I'm not too sure that one can claim that those who are for the deal are anti-Ghanaian people, and those who are against the deal are anti-Ghanaian people.
So I'm sure you may have read the statement from Fuichikata and Kofi Ansan. Now, that's a second statement. They make the point that it would have been better for us in negotiating, for instance, to set the royalty at 10% minimum, and based on how much is generated, there's an incremental royalty. You've read that?
Well, I've read that, but let me also point out, and I have a lot of respect for Mr. Chikata. I've quoted him several times. He's the foremost expert when it comes to mining and mining law in our country. I mean, I have great respect for him. But let me also say, and as I say, the conversation should continue. Let's hear alternative views such as he is pointing out. But I will focus more on indigenous participation. Winston, everywhere in the world, the mining industry, the extractive industry has benefited countries when you have a ramped up or heightened indigenous participation. There's been that talk, long-standing talk about how Johannesburg is built by mining, how Australia, Perth, is built by mining, and how Obuasi is a dilapidated town, and so on. It is because Ghanaians don't own shares or equity or interest in our mining operation. It's as simple as that. When you go to Johannesburg, the mining companies in Johannesburg is South Africans even if they are white. I mean, there's another whole argument there, debate there about mining apartheid, which is the fact that the people who hold the shares are whites and so on. But that's another matter. Indigenous participation as opposed to royalties, because face it, royalties simply means, quote unquote, you are sort of a royal, and therefore just by having the resources you are given a certain token if you want. But where the value comes from is indigenous participation, having an architecture where your citizens hold equity, or the state holds equity in the mining operation. And again here, Winston, this is the first time in our country's history where we have structured any lease, and I repeat, first time in our country's history where we structured any lease where by law we are obligating the company to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange and offer a minimum of 30% of Ghanaian participation. It's never happened in the history of our country before. In fact, not too long ago, I've been working with a group of people. I've been working with the Minerals Commission, some experts, to find a way of collaborating with the Chamber of Mines to have an arrangement where Ghanaian large-scale gold mining companies will list on the Ghana Stock Exchange and float their shares so that Ghanaians can also buy shares in those companies. We still not made any progress. So this is the time that already we have 19%, and it is written in black and white in the lease that they will list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And when they list on the Ghana Stock Exchange, the minimum indigenous participation will be 30%. I recall that on one occasion when we went to brief the president on this negotiation, the president had to ask us to suspend the negotiation and have the chief executive officer of the Ghana Stock Exchange, one Mrs. Asante Abena Asante, Abenamor, yes, Mrs. Abenamor, thank you, my friend, my very good friend. She should forgive me that, Mrs. Abenamor, to come up with a policy of a sort, or to come up with a roadmap to ensure that even the listing and the acquisition of the shares do not result in the usual system where Ghanaians become front for foreigners. And so she had to present a paper. So what is the point I'm making? The point I'm making is that from where I sit, and I've been following this discussion thoroughly, I see a good number of people being concerned about two things, and legitimately so, and rightly so. They've been concerned about the fact that is this lease, is this transaction different from what we structured since Gordon Kogisbeck's time? Is this transaction different from, as they put it, quote and unquote, the colonial architecture for mining? Which colonial architecture for mining, we should ask ourselves, what are the characteristics of a colonial architecture for mining? The three fundamental pillars of that architecture are: one, that they export the raw mineral out of the country. That's the first one. All the mining operations in our country, the mineral is exported in its raw state. Gold, manganese, bauxite, you name it. Two, that the value chain, not a significant proportion of the value chain is retained in country. Three, that there's no indigenous participation in the mining operations of the colonial architecture of mining. That is principally, that is what constitutes the colonial architecture of mining. That is how we've done it all these years. So the question is this: how does this lithium lease and transaction differ from this colonial architecture of mining? And I want to just respond to that very quickly. One, when it comes to the export of raw material, we have put in place very copious provisions in the lease, which will mean that under no circumstances will lithium be exported in its raw form. That is a fundamental departure from the colonial architecture of mining. Two, when it comes to value addition, we have insisted that they must build here in Ghana a chemical plant to add value to the lithium. That is a departure from the colonial architecture of mining. Three, when it comes to indigenous participation, we have insisted that they list on the Ghana Stock Exchange and have a minimum of 30% Ghanaian participation. It could be more. So now, in answer to your question, government believes government believes. Very, it's not anything to do as it's not anything that should suggest that we are being adamant or we are not listening or we are calling the bluff or damning the consequences of anything. But it's just because we believe that this transaction, in its fullest of terms, as I've sought to explain, is in the best interest of the Ghanaian people.
Right. So before the break, I said that when we come back, we will try and establish the value of this concession. Numbers are flying around, right? There's some confusion around the valuation. We've heard 1.4 billion. I think MIIF is the source of that. Bloomberg reports that MIIF is saying that the concession, the project, the Ewoya project alone is valued at $1.4 billion with a capacity to power 1.4 million Tesla vehicles, right? But then we've also heard $691 million. I think that one was a proposed offer by Asori to buy Atlantic, which is the company that did the initial work, at $0.42 per share in cash. And they said that came to something like 222 million, and it translates into a valuation of $691 million for the Ewoya project, which obviously is not $1.4 billion. Then we've also seen 360 million. So which one is it? What is the value of this concession? How much lithium is down there?
Well, first of all, the report I have indicates that the find, as we speak today, as of 2022, March 2022, the find is 30.1 million tons. But always remember that in mining, what they call the mine life and the resource deposits, you continue to explore. So even whilst you've made a discovery and you are extracted the ore through your mining operations, exploration is continuous, because otherwise your mine life will end up being short and unsustainable. So, and the point you made about the value that should be placed on this find, the value keeps changing. I mean, for example, the pricing of lithium is taking a downward trend, and everybody knows that. I was on Bloomberg and this matter came up, which indicates that the pricing of lithium is on a downward trend. It is so because there is active research into finding alternatives to lithium, graphite and others, and the green energy transition is one that the developed world is employing other methods and engaging in research to ensure that lithium is replaced. So that is also had some negative impact on the pricing of lithium. And the much talked about lithium being the mineral of the future and so on and so forth is beginning to be questioned, and I think that it's important that we factor that in the whole discussion.
So 30.1 million tons is
as at March 2022.
As at March 2022. Do you know how much the annual production is going to be? How much are they going to actually mine per year out of this 30.1 million?
Well, I can get you that in the GFE. The Minerals Commission will have such details, and I believe Professor Cletus, check that out for me right now, and okay. I'll give you that information. All
right, I'm very interested in that because I'm trying to get an idea of the annual value.
I pray that my friend Kojo in the process will also become an expert in lithium. We'll cash him, my brother. Keep up with the work.
All right. Now, bearing in mind that as you said, these figures might change as we learn more.
Yes, exactly.
How do we ensure that Ghana always ends up with the best side of this deal? the money that will accrue to Ghana is based on the price of what is mined and sold. Now, what are the terms of this concession agreement? I want to read from Fui Chikata and Kofi Ansah's opinion. There is an interesting paragraph here. It says, and I quote, "It is on the gross revenue that government royalties and the growth and sustainability levy will be calculated. That will also be the basis for assessing the company's income tax liability. It is clearly in the interest of Ghana for the company to obtain the highest price possible for its products. As we understand it, half of the concentrate, which will have a lithium oxide content of 6%, so-called SC6, will be sold through an offtake agreement to a US company, Piedmont, which has significant direct and indirect ownership interest in the Ewoya project." So that means the concessionaire, according to Fui Chikata's research, the concessionaire is owned by Piedmont, and Piedmont will also be the off-taker. So in essence, they'll be selling the SC6 product to themselves.
And is that a raw product?
Yes, it is.
Is it a raw product?
Yes.
Not the concentrate.
This is
not the concentrate.
It is the concentrate. The half of the concentrate, which will have a lithium oxide content of 6%, is concentrate. Yes, so-called SC6 will be sold through an offtake agreement to a U.S. company, Piedmont, which has significant direct and indirect ownership interest in the Ewoya project. The other half, having lithium oxide content of 5.5%, will be sold to others. Later on, we'll like some clarity on who the others will be. But the important point being made here is that the agreement must require that prices obtained by the company are in line with market prices, and especially in the case of the sale to Piedmont, that prices are at arm's length. Surely the government must insist on seeing the provisions of the offtake agreements.
Yeah, it's a brilliant submission, but Mr. Chikata and Mr. Ansah. As you know, Mr. Ansah is the first CEO of the Minerals Commission when it was established. So he's a man who is very experienced in this area. I've dealt with him extensively, and I have respect for his expertise. So this analysis is very important, but it's also important for me to point out that off-taker agreement is not been approved by the government of Ghana yet. We've not approved that off-taker agreement. That off-taker agreement is yet to be presented to the Minerals Commission for onward transmission to my office and be examined thoroughly. All I can say, and I think that is where the conversation should move to. That's where the conversation should shift to, which is how are we going to work together as stakeholders, as a country, to ensure that the terms we've agreed to are not compromised in any form or shape through sophisticated arrangements which may be above us, and it, as at a certain stage I have said and I've insisted that we are even going to have to bring external support, external expertise. And when I say external expertise, I'm not talking about foreign external expertise, but people like Mr. Ansah and the rest, and people who are vested in this area. We're going to bring them on board and constitute a project monitoring team from the ministry to monitor the execution of this project, because that is where, for me, that is the gravamen of the issue. That is where I'm keeping an eye on. All the things we've agreed to: build a refinery in Ghana, build a chemical plant in Ghana, ensure that you list on the stock exchange, 30% minimum Ghanaian participation, and they are indeed Ghanaians and not Ghanaian fronting for foreigners. You should make sure that the byproducts are sold in Ghana here, so that our ceramic industry also will boom, feldspar, kaolin, and all of those things. All the various components of this agreement, which I have absolute confidence in, that if we go through them, will serve the interests of our country. There's another area a lot of people have lost in the whole discussion, which is local content. We have a whole robust regime when it comes to local content. Contract mining services, so many other components of the value chain when it comes to the production and the operations of the company, which our local content regulations and laws insist must be reserved for Ghanaians. To what extent are we going to ensure that this company sticks to that? I'm told, I mean, it's yet to be authenticated, but I'm told that the mining contract alone constitute 39% of the operations of the company. And mining contracts in Ghana, surface mining contracts in Ghana, are reserved exclusively for Ghanaians. Are reserved for companies like BMC, for engineers and planners, of Rockshore, of Maripoma, of you name them, Ghanaian companies. And I don't particularly care who gets the company, who gets the job, provided the person or the company or the entity is a Ghanaian company. And when that happens, they are going to be responsible for about 39% of the operations of the country. That's a lot of money. And finally, when you take all of it together, in terms of our royalties, in terms of the Ghanaian who holds the 4.4% shares, Nunu Mensa, the Ghanaian who holds 4.4%, he's held it since 2020. He's held it since 2012. When you put all of it together, Fui Chikata and Kofi Ansah rightly concludes, in my view, that the state, the government of Ghana, is going to retain 51% of the direct project monetary benefit, with the company getting 49%. So in this analysis, you don't pick royalty alone and then you do an analysis of that. Free carried interest, you do analysis of that. You pick this other physical arrangement, you do analysis of that. You do it in its totality, including local content, including contract mining, including service, and all of those things. And that is how they came to this conclusion that the government, and for that matter, the state of Ghana, is going to retain 59%.
But 59% of what? And that brings us back to the original question about the value of this
of the monetary benefits.
So this 1.4 billion or 600, which one is it? Now that we've determined how many tons, 30.1 million as at 2022.
And I have that information for you. The yearly tonnage per annum which will be exploited is 350,000 tons.
350,000.
And it may go up due to continuous exploration, as I explained.
Okay, that is a lot.
Yes, that's a lot.
That would make
the more the better.
Yes, but that would make Ghana,
the more the better.
That would make Ghana the biggest lithium mining company in the world.
Yes, the more the better.
Currently, Australia, where 46.9% of lithium comes from, they are doing 61,000 tons per year, according to.
The more the better, isn't it?
This was published
more royalties, more corporate tax, more.
According to this website, visualcapitalist.com, 61,000 per year, and that's 46.9%. We are saying we are going to mine 350,000 tons per year. That is about 5 times the biggest.
But why do you
country?
Why do you seem scandalized by that? Why? I on a daily basis.
I'm not scandalized. I'm seeking clarification.
Yes.
Ghana is about to become the biggest lithium mining country in the world.
Good news, isn't it? I am working day in, day out for gold production to go up.
And we've given this concession to one company, the biggest mining concession in the world.
Yes, but is that company that engaged in exploration? Is that company that is involved in the whole investment? Invested a lot of money into the concession, and is a company that is applied and is being given a mining lease. What is important is what is the state standing to benefit. If the state stands to benefit, as Mr. Chikate and Co. Indicating to us, the state stands to benefit 51% of the monetary benefit that will accrue out of this project. It will mean the more lithium we're able to produce, Ghana retains 51%. That is more money into the national treasury. That is more money into the national economy. That is more development for the country, and that is more prosperity for the country. I'm working day in, day out. Look, when I became minister, Ghana was number 2. Ghana had been overtaken by South Africa as the number 1 gold producing country in Africa. And we worked day and night. We put in place all kinds of measures and policies. And last year, Ghana then overtook South Africa.
We are number 1.
We're now number 1. That is good news.
Let me
that is good news.
Some detail on the refinery, very quickly, because we've only got a couple of minutes to go. Now, the language of the deal suggests that the concessionaire is going to make an assessment whether or not to establish a refinery. And if their assessment says that they cannot, then they will pass that responsibility on to some local company to do so.
Listen, that assessment, okay, Kojo, that's I think one of the mistakes a lot of people have made. That assessment is not going to be at the whims and caprices of the company. That assessment is being done in conjunction with the Minerals Commission. So if they say indication that and that suggests that we cannot have a refinery in Ghana, the Minerals Commission will have to verify that and corroborate that. But more importantly, don't forget, there's a provision there which deals with any mischief, if I may put it that way, advisedly. If there's ever any mischief, I don't suspect there will be. If there's ever any mischief to come to the conclusion that we cannot have a refinery because of this and that reasons, if a third party establishes a refinery, they are bound by law to give an off-taker agreement to the third party refinery, and the third party refinery will be fed with all the products or all the lithium they will mine. And today, as I speak to you, my office is inundated with proposals for the establishment of, in fact, some are far advanced. So if I may be made to conclude, we will have a refinery here in Ghana, and we will not export our lithium in its raw form. It will not happen.
Right. Final question, 30 seconds. Were you under pressure to sign this deal? Was there some time constraint? Why the rush?
I was absolutely under no pressure. On the contrary, we dragged this and delayed it. The company put in the mining application as far back as 2022, Kojo. And ordinarily, when a company makes a commercial find and they put an application, it takes a matter of weeks, and you can go back and conduct your research. My predecessor ministers for lands and natural resources, how long did it take them when mining applications were lodged for them to sign them? It takes them weeks. The company have been on this matter from 2022, and indeed we're getting into even an embarrassing situation which suggested that a foreign company is coming to Ghana. They've done exploration, they spent a lot of money, they've made a commercial find. By law and international practice, they are entitled to a mining lease, and yet the Ghanaian government is dragging its feet, and which was having a negative impact on Ghana's image in the international mining community. So
it took longer
there was
than normal.
Far longer, and there was absolutely no rush. Why must there be a rush?
Okay.
Why must there be a rush?
I'm so sorry. Our time has completely run out. There is a rush on our conversation.
I think we should have another one.
But I want to say a big thank you to you, because we do
one.
have to continue this conversation.
Yes.
There's a lot of education to be got from it, and I appreciate your time with us this morning. Samuel Abu Jinapor,
thank you very much for having me.
the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources.